To whom much is given, much is required. Part of that requirement is sharing. Culture is the heartbeat within our lives, and it's at the core of so many things. While we live in a time when we are starving for wisdom, I welcome you to your wisdom retreat at Culture Raises Us. My guy, Chris, thank you for coming and having this convo. I've had the pleasure of having many sit downs and conversations with you, both formally and informally. So I always talk about this show and in general, to whom much is given, much is required, right? And I think part of that requirement is sharing. So I wanted to share some of what I've been blessed to experience with you, with many others, because I think you have so much to offer in this space. So an early, sincere thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
For the time. Yeah. So, before we jump in and I give line of sight, or you provide line of sight to kind of your background, your history, who you are, I always start, when you hear culture, what does that mean to you?
Oh man, it evokes a lot of emotions, more than meaning. But I just know that from my own personal perspective, it's something that we drive. We being people of color. It's just something we fundamentally have driven from the beginning of time. I think that when you first get into any form of culture-bearing experience, whether that's bringing music to the forefront or the arts to the forefront or even technology to the forefront, I think that you kind of overlook what it actually means in the moment because you're in the grind. And it's only until you have a moment to step back and take a look at how you have influenced the way the world works and how others have influenced the way the world works, is that you have a true understanding of what culture is. To give it a bit of definition, Aster, it's a tough one. I thought about it yesterday when we spoke about it briefly, and it's just, it's a sense of self. It's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of a few things. It's a necessity. It's urgent. It's a space that we have, as Black people, have always had to thrive in because, one, and I don't want to digress, but not really knowing who we are, it kind of helps us establish at a minimum where we're going. And it kind of puts us in the forefront of the conversation all the time. You look at I think a couple of things drive culture, man, music and fashion, and not necessarily in that order. And we're generally in the forefront of both, the innovation that we bring to it, the forward thinking that we bring to it. There's no way around it. It's just,
No, I get it. I love it. And we're going to talk about all those things and obviously, how you've played a role, but just have some dialogue on how we see this thing. Here goes the humble nature. Here goes the humble nature. I love it. But give a little context to who you are, and a little background on yourself for those who don't know.
I started in 1991, man. Howard University, myself and my childhood friend, Ryan Glover, we started out promoting shows with the former mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed. He invited us to come in and do a homecoming show, which I think was Mary J. Blige, Rex and Effect, Big. And that was like our first taste into the music industry. But more importantly, when you come from the Bay Area, man, Oakland was not a very progressive town post the Panthers. Like, it's a very crime-ridden town, and we had never seen progressive Black people in Oakland. And so coming to DC, having that experience with Kasim, seeing somebody do something that was pivotal, was a real eye-opener for me. And I've always had a fascination with music, but I don't write, sing, ham-bone. I don't do anything creative. But I've always been a connoisseur of music and a deep listener of music. And I think I learned to read, actually, off early James Brown records, not to date myself. So
wow,
it's always kind of intrinsically been in me. But that was my first taste of, hey, maybe I can leverage this passion that I have for this space in a different way, or in a way that was unconventional to me. And that kind of started everything, man. We took that experience. We came down to Atlanta with another childhood friend, Noni Lee, and we built a small studio, man, probably about the size of this kitchen, and started just signing songwriters and producers. And a lot of the people that we had gone to school with were starting to be affluent in the space. Puff, Shantae Page, Mark Pitts, Derek Angeletti. So we started to leverage those.
This is actually when I met you. This is exactly when I met you.
So Terry Ross joined us soon thereafter, who's another childhood friend, as a partner. Jaha Johnson, Shakir Stewart, they all work with us to kind of, Shantae Page, to kind of help us build out this company. And we started really taking songwriters and producers up to New York and pitching their songs and pitching their creative. And the dots kind of started to connect. Started to get on some early projects, and it really took off, formulating a partnership with the producers with Puff. And then we landed our first artist at Def Jam. And so that was kind of the beginning of my music career. And it, since then it took off, man. I've become a music publisher, both independently on a corporate level. I worked at Warner Chappell from 2004 to 2008. I think the company was probably number 5 in market share when I got there. It was number 2 when I left. We had a lot of success there. I was able to bring a very small company mentality to a large company. They were very much so accustomed to buying market share, which I had never done before. So it's kind of like they gave me a small lot of land and said, we're getting out of the urban music business, but we're going to still get calls. So we want you to help us manage what we're doing. Take this small piece of land and just monitor it and keep it groomed. But for me, I'd never had that much land before. I was like, damn.
Right.
This 12 by 12 of land, and I can go down and reinforce it and put some parking underneath it and go up and build 12 stories, because it allowed me to use their method of purchasing market share and use my method of developing market share and kind of put them together.
Yep.
And so it allowed us to grow very, very quickly. I went from there and started working independently as an A&R person for the likes of Jennifer Lopez and Mary J. Blige. I've managed Brian Michael Cox and Jonte Austin, who are multi-Grammy Award winners for a better part of 20 years. And then I've just been a broker. I did the deal with Usher and Scooter Braun for Justin Bieber at Def Jam. I then went on to work as EVP at Def Jam and make all the early Justin Bieber albums, as well as Jennifer Lopez albums. And so that was the crux of what I've done for a long time, man. It's just the music industry. But the music industry is a young man's game.
Yeah.
And I realized probably at the apex of it, Aster, is that I'd never really worked before. I'd just done things that I was passionate about and had the good fortune to get paid for them, right? And so
Which is a blessing in itself.
It truly is, man. But my passion began to wane, and I didn't know where my next passion was going to lock in. And this is right around the time, I think my kid was like 5 or 6 years old. So I stepped back, took some time away, taught him how to use his left hand, how to finish at the rim with the left. Just kind of take a step back and try and figure out what the next passion would fall in. And acutely, it started to run into the storytelling space, because you have all these experiences. You know what I mean? I think I'm a creative by nature that just happens to have some business acumen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I started to see, okay, this is a vehicle that I could tap into. Let me figure out where it can work for me. And then by the good fortune, 20 years later, that same relationship that started me in a music career, Kasim, asked me to come be the film commissioner in Georgia. And so by doing that, it opened up a lot of doors and a lot of access to what I wanted to do as a producer. And that's kind of what I've jumped full-fledged into today. Today, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an owner and entrepreneur of a publishing company, but I work as a CIO for Quality Holdings, which is the parent company to Quality Control Music. And there, it allows me to just leverage my platform and leverage my Rolodex across several areas to help the company grow, whether it's doing a deal with like Greenwood Bank, or whether it's trying to sell TV shows, or whether it's signing artists. It's just trying to make quality QC's footprint even wider in the marketplace. And so that's kind of the long and short of where I am right now.
Yeah, when I think about you and this journey, I think about the culture, what I call perseverance and evolution, right? That I think you epitomize through your professional and personal journey, right? And this is why I deem you so important to have this conversation on building cultures with integrity. Why reinvesting in your culture, in your community, is table stakes in America, and why it's so necessary to reclaim some of this power and ownership of these cultures that's been created moving forward, right? So when you talk about, and you already mentioned this word of a developer, which is what you claim yourself to be, which agree 1000%. I also definitely make that correlation to being what I call a cultivator, right? Which I think is one of the reasons why you've been so essential in shaping culture through music and now content, and content is king. What's the seed, though, that you have to water, which I know is probably second nature at this point for you and very instinctive at this point, daily, to kind of fuel this?
I've got to believe in it, man. If I'm not a transactionalist, if I just did
Right.
things for the transaction, I probably would have made a lot more money. But I don't think that I need to feel good about what I'm doing, and not only creatively, but in my spirit.
Man.
Um, Specifically as a person of color and kind of learning as I have gone along, it's essential that one stays true to oneself to be able to have some degree of longevity in the space and to be able to look at yourself in the mirror, to be able to look at your
On.
kids, be able to look at the people that you're preaching to or that you're trying to instill some information into and know at your core that you've been true to these things that you are professing, that you're not just saying it because it sounds good. You've actually walked that walk. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm I don't know if pride is an essential word here, but I'm very prideful about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I still need to always be able to feel good about me and what my contribution looks like, on a personal and on a professional level. And that's kind of been the staying power. It's not always the easiest journey,
No.
but I found it to be the most fulfilling. And to get at the end of the day, man, I have to be able to sleep with myself. You know what I mean? And as long
That
as I'm
part.
comfortable with that, and that's the message I always try and push forward. Like, guys, you got to be true to yourself, because if you don't know how to be anybody else, you know how to be you. You know what I mean? And this is an interesting time for that.
Yep.
We grew up we were having success. Our initial success came in a totally different era, and then the world is obviously evolving. We're seeing some derivative effects of several things that went on in our generation, and so it's challenging. But I still think all these people have to stay true to themselves. Have to.
Yeah, and it's again, it's that example of integrity that I feel like, again, you've always modeled, and
Yeah.
it's again evident in even your response. And I look at, so you've worked with a ton of different artists, you've worked with a
Yep.
ton of different labels and companies over the years. Was there a particular moment where you realized how big and instrumental this music culture was to overall culture as we know it? This is kind of I always have this intersection question, right? Because we know the seeds that we work on and plant, some fester and grow into this, I mean, huge thing that we never would have thought. I wonder,
Yeah.
is there a point or a memory where you remember clearly, like something clicked, like, okay, wait, this is different?
I think there's been a few,
Yeah,
and I think
please.
that they're the necessary engine to keep going. But if I can recollect the early stages of being in this business, if you think about it, Aster, when we were trying to compete, it was all about the left hand side of the Billboard chart, and getting a space somewhere.
Mhm.
And it was being controlled at that time. I think all the ballads were being controlled by like R. Kelly and Babyface, and I think a combination of Tim and Puff and JD were probably controlling the up tempos. And so if you wanted to live over there, you had to figure out your niche of where you were
Mhm.
going to matter. And so for us, it became these wildly melodic kind of mid-tempo records that may not have been your first single, but would drive your album sales, would sit on the left-hand side of charts for 20, 25 weeks and continuously drive your album sales. And when I think our first record that really broke through was a record called Get Gone on Idea, which is a group that nobody cared about. The label didn't care about the group. The general public didn't know who the group was. And we took a chance on working on the group just because we were trying to get our foot in the door. But I believe very passionately about the kind of records that we were making. And we put a record out on them called Get Gone. And that was our first really true connection in the vein of what we were doing. And it's kind of like you've been booed and booed and booed and booed. And then when you get to cheer, you get the connective point of why did they cheer? Okay, what your
Right.
sensibilities have a way of turning on. And so you start to understand what you're doing well and where you fit in. And then we just compounded that. We worked that muscle and worked that muscle. And we took it to Aaliyah, and we took it to Tony Braxton, and we took it to Jagged Edge. And before you know it, that early ideal seed that we planted, to coin your phrase, they blossomed into flowers. And we realized that, okay, this is doable. It takes a lot of it, it's just intrinsic. I think there is some skill set involved there and some talent, but it's also the faith and the ability to be able
Mm.
to identify something and just unapologetically move it forward. You know what I mean? Until there's nowhere else to go. And that was the most pivotal. I mean, there's been several since then that were very key in me saying, oh, okay, I can go up another level, or I can go up another level. But that was the first one. That was the first one that made me be like, okay, I might be onto something here.
And you know it's a great lesson, a life lesson, because it's something that you said came from something that nobody was paying attention to. Nobody understood at that time, and it's also a reflection of maybe timing, right? And being committed to the craft and to the art that you're bringing, and knowing that in time, this thing will be what it should or can be, based off of that right moment and that intersection.
I had some early experiences in my life, man, that really made me not want to go where it's populated, but go where it's dense, go
Yeah,
where it can matter, um, move away from the crowd as opposed to with the crowd. Some very pivotal things happened early in my life to make me realize that going with the flow is not going to work for me personally. I need to be
yeah,
able to um, go. I had no problem since from my early experiences going where there was what it wasn't heavily populated, going where I knew we would have an opportunity to stand out, where we would have an opportunity to make a difference. I had no problem with that based on some of the early experiences I have in my life. And that,
and that's not normal, bro.
no, 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 not at all. It was normal to me though,
There you
because
go.
the guys who raised me, who were kind of like my father figures, were always about don't follow the crowd,
Yeah,
never follow the crowd, never follow the crowd, never follow the crowd. And I think that the early lesson didn't really resonate with me until I got in the crowd, till I could see the crowd. You know what I mean? And then you start to figure out that everybody in the crowd looks the same. That's why it's the crowd. You know what I mean? So how do
right.
you differentiate yourself from that? And I was very fortunate to learn that at a very, very, very early age, and that has stuck with me. It's a lonely existence at times, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay
Yeah,
with it.
well, guess what? It's a lonely experience being in a crowd when you don't even know who you are,
Exactly.
because you're
Exactly.
you're trying to follow a mass and a blueprint and not define your spot within that blueprint, which is what we're all intended to truly be, is
Right.
individuals. If we're all the same, and in the crowd, we're doing all ourselves a disservice. So I'm just thankful that at such an early age you were so comfortable with being outside of the norm or the box,
It,
because
it,
it's so
it's
easy to go with the programming.
it's why we have our own fingerprints. It's why we have our own DNA. Like, we're all
Yep.
very different individuals. And to your point, we're here to exist, in our own space, for
Yep.
sure. Yep.
And so you've been super unapologetic and bullish on, your efforts in investing and promoting and highlighting the entertainment scene in Atlanta, obviously, from your
Yep.
music business, roots to Kasim working with on the
Yeah.
film side, and now QC. How
Yeah.
would you describe, though, the evolution you've seen in the city since you first arrived to now? And where do you want to see it go?
That's a good question, man. I think that, and I don't want to sound nostalgic, but when we came here, it was a very community-based city. Atlanta's a crown jewel in the South, right?
Man.
It has had the benefit of 50 plus years of Black leadership.
Uh-huh.
So folks here are accustomed to seeing people of color in powerful positions, which when you come here, it's not your norm, right?
Oh,
And so once you acclimate yourself to it, we rented our first building that we rented was from H.J. Russell, who is arguably for a long, long time the largest Black contractor in the nation. Kasim helped us with that. A lot of the relationships that we made were with the organized noises of the world and with the JDs of the world and the Dallas Austins of the world and the Kevin Wales of the world. These were other Black men who looked like us, that saw that we were very serious about doing what we wanted to do, and were very collaborative in that effort. I don't know if that could have happened anywhere else. It
right,
definitely could happen where we came from.
right.
And so there was a strong sense of community here. And if you told the line, and there was a degree of acceptance. And so I don't think that could have happened anywhere else. And that allowed us to really bloom in this community. And I saw it happen with not just us, the red zones of the world. I saw so many people come here and flourish because we all, in a very competitive nature, helped each other.
Yep.
If you look at the last 25 years of Atlanta, it's been highly competitive, but highly, highly collaborative, right?
Yeah.
Um, we plug in all different areas, whether it's community, whether it's in a political space, whether it's in the entrepreneurial space or in the business space, and I haven't seen that synergy anywhere else. And so I'm very
Agree.
proud to being a part of that growth. Where we stand right now, I still feel a sense of community. Atlanta is a lot more crowded than it used to be in so many
Mhm.
ways. From a population standpoint, but also from a social standpoint. I think we have far more attention on us as a city and as a state based on what's happening in the political landscape. And so it doesn't give me the same warmth that it did when I first came here. But I would also attribute that to I was greener. I was a young man.
Right.
Ignorance is bliss. You know what I
That's
mean?
right. Yep.
Um, I think as far as achieving goals, we spoke about Ryan and what he's doing with Greenwood. I don't know if he could do that in another city. You know what I mean? With the same
Right.
kind of synergy that he did here. I mean, I think even the story with Kev and P and QC and what they're building, there were several seeds that were planted before they're doing what they're doing that allowed Black men to think this is possible. If you talk to Coach, he'll tell you coming down to our building at noontime, the first time was the first time he saw progressive Black men doing things that he always wanted to do. So,
That was that was a seed that you planted in him.
but there were several seeds around the city that he could have witnessed that from the same people that gave us the same energy. I
That's
don't know
right.
if I don't know if that same synergy exists here in the same way. I'd like to believe that it does. I see it more. It does. It does. It's just a lot more. It's a lot. It's some more crowded space here. But I do see the same opportunities here as I saw before. Maybe not for me in the music space because, as I alluded to earlier, it's a young man's game. But I do think that we have room to evolve. And not to digress, but Georgia has probably the best tax credit in the universe.
Man.
Like, nothing's even close. We probably have had $4 billion in spend this year in that space, probably 10 to $11 billion in economic impact in the last calendar year. Probably in the last decade, it's probably been 10 to $15 billion of just an ecosystem and utilities put here for filming in the television and movie space. But nothing gets greenlit from here unless it's Tyler. And to me, that's so vast backwards, especially with the emergence of all of these digital platforms. 5 years ago, we had 5 really important SVODs. 5 years from now, we're going to have 100. And so
Pause.
as people who are curators of the culture and who drive these narratives that so many people tap into to tell stories, it seems like a really ripe opportunity to kind of launch IP from Atlanta. I think some of the frustration is if you think about California has a high tolerance for investing in IP by way of tech and by way of the music and entertainment space. They're used to batting 200 and still having phenomenal success. Here, if
Right.
it doesn't have 4 walls and some air conditioning blowing through it, it's red clay underneath it. As a case study, people are a little bit risk averse to that model. So trying to help introduce how that model could be successful here is part of this next chapter. And I feel more retention in this space than I felt earlier in the music space. And again, ignorance is bliss. Maybe it was just because I was a younger man. And there
Right.
was far less case study for the music industry, but for what we're doing in the film and TV space is a whole lot of case study. And it's a harder mold to break, but I'm committed to it. You know what I mean? And I think that there's other people in the city that are committed to it.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of see where it lands. Maybe you could check back with me in 6 months and I'll be able to tell you, maybe 6 months to a year, and I'll be able to tell you with a definitive position how I feel like you're able to flourish in the city compared to back in the days with greater clarity.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously critical for you to preserve and kind of grow regional culture, obviously,
Absolutely.
and talent. And your philosophy has kind of always been rooted in taking talent and culture, and
Yep.
content, within music and giving it a broader
Yep.
global appeal and platform, rightfully so. Why was that and is that so important to you and the creators within it?
I mean, to go back to your earlier question, we are the identifiers of culture and we drive it, period.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If I parallel it to the music space, this was a regional market 25 years ago.
Right.
Regional, right?
Right.
Nothing regional about all the artists that have exploded from here in their global footprint today.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And all of these artists started from a very small, even smaller seed than the mainstream because most of these artists had to show and prove in some capacity to be able to be noticed.
That's right.
Where if you were, and I say this with all respect, but if you were a West Coast rapper or a New York rapper, or if you were a singer, you could generally walk into a record company and get a deal based on your talent alone. Where when you walk into a building with this Southern drawl and this Southern slang, you know, if you were immediately looked at as regionalized. And so all these artists had to figure out how to break through to get on. Very similar to the story I told you earlier about how we broke in a very crowded marketplace. You have to figure out where you matter. But I think that we have always been the drivers in that space. And I think that storytelling is no different. You know, I shopped a TV show. I'm shopping a TV show right now to a major producer, and I had him tell me that the story was regional.
Yeah.
And I was like, so regional, like Southeastern region? He was like, yeah, like Southern regional, Atlanta, Georgia regional. I was like, so you mean like kind of like how Outkast was regional, or T.I. was regional, or Future regional, or Baby was regional? You mean that kind of regional? So I think he heard me.
Right. Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. Right. But we still have to push it. We still have to make it on our own to be able to make it worth something. And then everybody throws gas on it. If you think all of the popular producers are storytellers of color in the music in the space today, they all had to put themselves on to some degree. You know, Issa is a household name now, but it doesn't happen without Aqua Black Girl. If you look at Will Packer or Lee Daniels, they had to create tremendous levels of risk to be able to put themselves on. And now they're all household names, but there's always a sense of show and prove that has to happen to be able to break through those doors. And so hoping to create that kind of synergy here again as well in the future, and so that we're not looked at as being regional anymore.
Yeah, and it's so beyond, and I love that you did the air quotes of regional, right? No, because it's really comical, and it goes back to your earlier point that you touched on that we're really going to go deep on in terms of we've created, I mean, let's be 100% all of this, right? We are at the epicenter of creating this. And when you talk about Black culture as we know it, it's quite often borrowed, appropriated, or kind of used to inspire other cultures and industries. Talk about the importance of Black ownership and recognition of what it is that the Black community has brought not only to this country, but this world.
You know, the only thing that gives you true ownership in any space, I mean, the true influence in any space, Aster, is ownership. Right? There's no way around it. You know, it's as long as you own your piece of it, you can influence how it moves to some degree. I think that we have driven all forms of culture, but I think we have been at the very bottom of the barrel and to some degree outside of the barrel as far as the equity position in it. And I think it, you know, I mean, we could talk for hours about it, but I attribute it to, you know, me and my son were having an argument the other day because all the other nationalities that are here are immigrants. We're not. We're slaves. And we were brought here specifically for the purpose of building wealth for other people. And I think it was a microcosm of what it turned into. But if you think about it fundamentally, everybody who was brought here was brought here to build wealth for other people. And then as we started to branch out and grow and started to find an identity for ourselves and kind of drive the meaning of what it is to be cool, what it is to be hot, what it is to be dope, what it is to be that guy, and in whatever realm you're in, then people who don't drive the culture have to tap back in and figure out, okay, how do I benefit from this? Is it the Cadillac and the gold chain? Is it the, let me give you a record deal where you earn 10 points and I recoup everything I spend on you from your 10 points? Like we have been so deconstructed as people. And so now over the last couple of generations, we're in the process of understanding our worth and understanding our value, slowly but surely building that value back up. It's not going to be a cakewalk though. As you can see, you know, based on the division that has happened in the country during the Trump era, is that, you know, basically, you guys got to stay in your place, right? But we basically are starting to understand our value and want for more beyond the traditional spaces, and that's not going to come easy, and that's not going to come without some hard lessons. I've learned some of my own. I'm sure you have too. But it's worth the fight because, again, as I attributed to earlier, the only thing that gives you real influence is ownership or maintaining some degree of ownership. You know, I think as Black people, two things we can't turn down is money and a camera, and we got to get over that. You know what I mean? We
If-
got to understand the value in things that everybody can't see. You know, the only thing that really allowed me to walk away from the music business and do something that I wanted to do, as opposed to what I had to do, was something I owned.
Yo, the line you just hit of we have to detach ourselves from the desire of that money and the camera is such a deep one. But you also said something where I feel like there's a sense of hope that you have that we've made some
Whoa.
strides. You said
I,
there's been progress.
I see the stories. I see, you know, and it's a game plan. It's not going to be a straight line. You know what I mean?
Right.
Look
Right.
at you look at the Jay-Z's of the world and his starting point, or even the Dr. Dre's of the world. That's hope, because Jay is really playing chess out here. And if you just watch him, he's truly, truly playing chess out here. And I'm not saying that everybody is Jay, but I think that there's some very if you are creating the basis of what's being leveraged and exploited, maintain a piece of the ownership.
Right.
So instead of taking $1 million to not own anything, take 100,000 to maintain most of your ownership. We have to. I'm teaching my son that every day, you know, and I don't think it's going to be taught in the masses. I think that it all starts in your home, where you actually have some influence and some control. I can drop into him all the hard lessons that I've learned, and then I branch out from there. But at least he's in my face every day.
Right.
And so I can, you know, go into different communities and talking to kids. Do you have influence? Do you have impact? Do they learn from your story? Do they see possibilities? Yes. But I'm on his head every day. And we could go back so much further, man, because I think that our generation is a very fortunate generation for you to be there to look after your kids the way I'm looking after mine, and instilling in your kids the way I'm instilling in mine. I think if you look at the whole crack era, where just people's homes were decimated by crack and by drug abuse, and the people who had no responsibility for bringing crack into the ecosystem were sent away for years. It's just an example of how, you know, the system is designed to keep us very level, are very oppressed. And so it's really up to us to do that hand-to-hand combat, to uplift each other. But it starts in all of our own households. Like I watch. I was about to touch something else, but I just watch it, and it's so necessary for them to understand their own value, because, you know,
Agreed.
It doesn't rest Gucci belt. It doesn't rest in those $300 pair of shoes. You know, it rests in this space between your ears. That's where your
Man,
value.
you know
lives.
what? One of my OGs hit me when I was back in New York, back home for a little while. He was just asking me about how I'm diversifying my portfolio of finances and things to that degree. And he said, where do you think the majority of your value, your value is, your financial value?
Mhm.
I started thinking, is this 401k? Is it my stocks? Is it my investments? Where is it? He says, no, it's your intellect. I said, excuse. He said, it's your intellect is
Yep.
your number one financial, and that just was like a mind blow, like, boom, because
true.
we devalue. Yeah, no, but you said it. That's exactly what you were saying. And it just brought me back to that moment. And, you know, another moment as I was listening to when you talk about the home, you know, we were also very much brought up in an era where we were supposed to come out of college, get a 9-to-5, work a job, and retire there, you know, after 30, 40 years, right? That was our role within society. Many of our homes, that's what it is. And that was our job.
Yep.
But I've realized our real job is exactly what you're talking about in terms of how are we shaping and molding human beings in our home to go out to be the best versions of themselves and examples of being different and not falling into the crowd and unapologetically being themselves.
Yep.
That's our number one job.
Yep, it is.
And so as I listen to,
it is. You're catching me on a good day, man. My son was just admitted to one of the 2 schools that he's really big on, and I know it's from everything that we were able to sink in to here. And I feel like we have the greatest amount of influence here. But what I'm most proud, outside of all of his prowess, is that he understands his value. He understands who he is outside of all these extracurricular things that are going on in the world. And he's putting himself in a position to be able to dance to his own music. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To the point that you made earlier, we all were instructed, go to school, then go to school again, and then join the workforce. You know,
Yeah.
it gives you a very false sense of security in the big picture of how the world works.
It
You know
really
what I mean?
does.
But we don't know no better, and it's every generation is a greater degree of understanding. Every new generation, and so we're going to know more than our parents did, and our kids are going to know more than we did. And
Exactly.
it's our job to kind of reprocess that thinking into, no, there's a real bite of the apple for you if you really really want it. It's not an easy bite to get, but once you bite it and start to digest it, it's yours. And so you
That's
have to
right.
figure out the methodology of how to go get that bite. And I'm feeling good about that journey that I'm on. It's probably out of all the shit that we talked about, man, it's the proudest accomplishment to watch him flourish and watch him do the things that he's doing, because that's how I'm really going to impact the world, by the person I
That's
put
your
here in,
legacy.
period. No other way to look at it.
That's
No
your
other way to look at
legacy.
it.
That's
Yep.
your legacy. So,
Yep.
when we go back to this equity commentary around culture and beyond the capital or equity piece, what are the ways do you think Black culture should be recognized and kind of celebrated? And are we close to getting this proper, what I call, recognition?
Um, Close in the grand scheme of how the rest of the world works? No.
Right.
But are we far better off than we were, say, 5, 10 years ago? Absolutely. Are we
Absolutely.
making a degree of progress? Absolutely. I think the social space that we live in right now has been phenomenal and terrible for the culture in itself, because those people who have great confidence and great vision for what they want to put forth in the culture, it gives them an opportunity to showcase themselves, removing that middleman, that gatekeeper that was, raping and pillaging your IP or whatever it is you're creating. And so when you do finally get on, somebody else owns and controls it. Now you have more of a hand-to-hand mechanism with your audience. They're able to get close to you. They're able to understand what you do. You're able to monetize those efforts directly. I think that is absolutely phenomenal, and we see it permeate. We see where if you look at recording artists, they're not selling their souls anymore. If you look at artists
There's
who are
Hicks.
actually paintings, they're not selling their souls anymore. And it's starting to have a real trickle down effect. And that part is exciting. I think the part that is kind of scary for me are the kids that don't really understand their value or haven't quite recognized the difference between true activation and popularity. You know what I mean?
That
True, you know, that part's a little bit scary, that you're doing everything in your power to get that 15 minutes of fame, as opposed to really creating,
impact.
building to have impact. And I'm not sure how that's going to shake out. Yeah, only time will tell. But I do think that the ability to eliminate a gatekeeper has been phenomenal for culture. I don't think that a lot of the brands that we have seen over the last decade would have experienced the phenomenal growth that they've experienced, because what they've been able to do is say, I'm the guy. Everybody around you, everybody on this social platform, this social channel understands I'm the guy because they follow me. And now I can control and influence what that looks like, as opposed to having to appeal to somebody who then puts you on, and hopefully there's a connection being made. Your
That's right.
connections are yours, and then what you do with them becomes your business. You know what I mean? And I think that's a phenomenal time as a builder, as an entrepreneur. That just creates phenomenal inroads.
Do you have a good
Phenomenal.
example of one of these gatekeepers?
I think if you look at just any form, I'll speak in general, but with some focus. All forms of media, the gatekeepers have been, for the most part, removed. If you think it happens to the music industry first, advertising, film and television, editorial, to put
Uh-huh.
your message out, you don't have to go through anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so whenever the gatekeeper has lost control of the gate, has lost control of distribution, whatever the business model was, it has to change. There's nothing you can do about it. You know, Jimmy Iovine told me a long time ago that Steve Jobs told him that all business models are built to be disrupted. And that's the truth. And so when you start to think about the purveyors of culture, and the people that are responsible for it, it gives you a greater opportunity to keep an ownership stake in it, because then you can go to the table with equity already, whether it's your
That's right.
follower, whether the people that you've been able to monetize, whether this community that you've been able to build. You can go to the table with leverage as opposed to going to the table begging, or even if you go to the table at all. I think the next step of it is figuring out us to finance, for people who look like you and me, how to finance our own dreams amongst ourselves.
Boom.
That's the next true step for us to be able to get to the other side. Because if you're responsible for, if you have this deep following and this deep kind of intrinsic kind of cultural impact, to be able to keep it communal without having it, you know, chopped up,
diluted
in any way. I think when we get there, it's all she wrote. But I think that, you know, obviously the other side is really working to keep us from getting there, because they know they don't drive culture. They're not responsible for creating
right.
culture the same way. So that's something that we have to be very cognizant of moving forward. You know, so no more Cadillacs and gold chains or whatever the modern iteration of it is. You know what I mean? Let me go the long way and own it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a mindset shift, right? And the mindset shift of me, when we came into this, it was about getting the deal. Just like you said, we just want to get the deal with our craft and our art and our gift. Now it's about with your craft, your art, and your gift, it's about maintaining an ownership piece for the longevity of it, and not just getting and making sure that is the deal.
Yep, that is the deal.
That's the shift.
Nobody should be able to exercise you out of or option you out of something you created. Nobody should be able to move with something that you created without your permission, without you having to check a box or give a thumbs up. And I think in the world that we're evolving into, like if you think about a lot of the people of color who create content, right? I think once you've proven yourself, or once you've taken the initial risk that connected the dots to culture, then ideally we should be able to create a support system economically to help those people moving forward. That breaks down the establishment tremendously, but it's the only way you can own and control and influence whatever you want to do moving forward. Nobody should be able to option you out of something you created under any circumstances.
No, I love that.
You have to have the fortitude to know that and understand the value of that, not only today, but 10 years from now and 20 years from now.
That's right. The long play.
It's
the marathon and not the sprint.
The marathon and not the sprint.
Yeah, and see, you've always been focused on the importance of setting goals, man, and having a vision and pushing things through to like the finish line, and you just hear it all in this. And you've actually helped me with that personally through the years. With you already doing so much in your illustrious career to date, what motivates you for your next set of goals, bro?
Just to know that once I set something up in my mind, man, I can't let it go. Right. And
you can't unsee that.
I can't unsee it. I just don't believe in no. It might be a distant yes from time to time.
Right.
But it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the no, because especially when you climbed a hill to get past the no to a yes, and you realize that you got scuffed up and you separated your shoulder and you bruised up your shin, but you're still alive, and now you're sitting on a yes. And so now it's like, okay, that wasn't so bad. You know what I mean? Or I made it, and the reward was far more satisfying than everything
something given to you.
As opposed, so it's just kind of how I've always operated, man. And once I lock in, and I only do things, Aster, that are important to me. Like I don't, it's the crowd theory that we talked about earlier. Once I identify something that can work for me and that I feel like can work in the marketplace, then I'm very unapologetic about how I get that done. And I don't have to talk to 50 people about it. I don't have to confirm with anybody about it. Once you've been booed before, like once you put some records out that haven't worked, and then once you put something out that has worked, then it kind of heightens your sensibilities. You get a greater confidence about what you're doing, and you're okay with the win or the loss as long as you did it the way you saw it in your mind, right?
That's
Because
right. Saw it through.
yeah, as long as you saw it through. And so for this next chapter, I have some very clear visions of what I want to do, at least in my life creatively. And there's always some other things that I'm chasing, you know what I mean, in that space. And so I've locked in on them, probably been locked in on them for the last couple of years. It's a little bit of a harder turn for me. It's a more challenging turn for me at this age because, one, you suffer from too much information at this point. And that's like when you were in your 20s, you were just doing shit. Like, I'm just going. And when you got punched back, you just kept going. And now when you see things now, you've been through so many things that your mind gets attacked by all these different thoughts because you have
Yep,
all
you're
this
jaded.
information. You're a little bit jaded. And so the real effort for me comes in working through that process now and being able to eliminate what I call the white noise to
The
stay
noise.
focused on what I want to do. And that's a daily process for me.
Yep.
That
Yep.
I will be lying to you
It's
if I
like
said.
starving the doubt and feeding the opportunity.
Yep. And so that's half the battle. And the other half of the battle is, when you first start in this business, you haven't touched the rainbow. But once you touch the rainbow a couple of times and you've had some success, then that becomes your internal expectation of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether it's conscious or subconscious, you just expect to touch the rainbow again. And so, I don't know how relevant or that important it is, but it doesn't go away. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, and so as you're chasing down these next bit of dreams, you still are very cognizant of that rainbow and that level of expertise and that level of activation. And so you want to make all those things that you aspire to do still come together with the same kind of fortitude that you were able to do in the past. It all takes some very finite focus, and then your circle gets smaller too as
Yeah,
you get
well,
older.
that part. There you go.
And so, when you were younger, you're obviously working with a ton of people where even meeting you, we're in two totally different fields, but there still is a tremendous amount of synergy with our
Mhm.
whole. There's at least a dozen, 2 dozen people trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, or at least, 2 degrees of separation from you. Now, as we all have gotten older, kind of gotten settled into our family life, gotten a little more isolated just by virtue of family, those extensions become harder to grab onto. And so you have to make a more conscious effort to do it. Whereas you just run into people day to day because you're out hooping or you're out at a party or you're out socially. So, I'm having to force myself to put myself in those circles to be able to move my agenda forward, which is a challenge for me, but I'm pushing through that. It's all a push through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
You
all a push
benefit.
through, and it's
But
about being intentional, right? Now you got to be even more
absolutely.
super
Yep.
intentional, which
Yep.
goes
Yep.
back to you always being such a individual having this vision and setting goals, right? It all
Yep.
aligns with that. It's like you said, it's different muscles that you're exercising, but they're for the same outcome.
Yep. Yep. And
And so
when you're this age, your muscles atrophy a little bit. So you have to work a little. You have to-
that's a
Yeah.
whole nother convo, bro. Because
No,
I
you're not
which
jumping out the car. You're not jumping out the car and going to hoop. You got a 30 minute. I got a
no.
30-minute stretch. Or
Listen, man. If and when I can even make it to go hoop, it's a whole
exactly.
different thing. But mentally, I feel like I'm still there. But you're 1,000% correct. It's just different things that we have to do to prepare ourselves to play
Yep.
the game. It's the
Yep.
same in life, right? It's
Yep.
different muscles that you have to exercise to continue to play at the level of touching the rainbow, as you said, which I love, touching the
Yep.
rainbow, because we're all vessels of purpose, right? And that purpose comes through at different parts of our journey. So
Mhm.
whatever it is you need to do to continue to fuel that ability to be a vessel of purpose and allowing your song to be played, I mean, that's
Okay.
what, for me, life is about.
I think that phrase that you just used, the vessel of purpose. I think you asked me a question earlier about this particular generation as it pertains to the culture. I feel like so many people are playing to other people's music as opposed
Yes.
to their own, and
Yes.
playing to other people's purpose as opposed to their own. And
Yes.
what's your purpose? My kid wants to be an investigative journalist that brings a voice to people who don't have any. That's his purpose. At least that's what he sees his purpose right now. And that really warms my heart as a 17-year-old because I want to see his generation move in their purpose. Everybody's
Mhm.
not going to be a rock star. Everybody's not going to be an athlete. You can find happiness and fulfillment in your purpose. What is that? You know what I mean? What
Huh.
is that? That's this generation has to lock into that because everybody is, you turn the TV is on all the time with this. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and so many of the feeds. And so it allows, someone's opinion of themselves to be kind of dismayed or tarnished at times. And that shouldn't be the case. Like move in your purpose. Very well,
Yeah.
very, very good point. Got to move in your purpose.
Yeah. Are you inspired by anyone outside of your industry?
Outside of my industry, um, I am. I am a, I'm a huge off on the court. I can't stand LeBron. I don't know if I don't like LeBron because I'm a Warriors fan. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know if they like because they compare him to Mike, and we all
Right.
witness Mike's great. But I mean, LeBron's a phenomenal basketball player. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. But
Can't take anything away from that.
his off the court game, though, is exceptional. You
Man.
know what I mean? It's unprecedented. It's a phenomenal building block for others to follow. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Maybe not the same magnitude because everybody's not going to be the best basketball player in the world. But I
Correct.
think the way he has empowered his own,
Mm.
through, and you know what? With the biggest tests, the whole debacle about Miami and yada yada yada, is he kept them empowered through trials and tribulations, and collectively they
Correct.
understood that we're going to stumble because nobody's perfect, but we're going to stay cohesive and we're going to keep building. And now he's on the verge of a billion and beyond. And I think that I just think that that's phenomenal. I really do. I think that he is an inspiration to many people who look like you and I. Just the cohesive nature of his business and putting his own people on and holding them accountable. I think it's just been phenomenal to watch.
Man, you said so many things in that that really resonated with me. I think the ability to empower. I mean, it's a word that we say so often, but when it actually happens, it's really a beautiful thing. And you're right. His example of empowering his crew
Yep.
and growing with his crew. And then
Yep.
the other thing that you mentioned through good and bad, right?
Yep.
Having the grace and giving the space to make mistakes.
Yep.
You and I know we don't get the same amount of grace to make mistakes at all. I go into conversations where I'm like, look, in addition to the opportunity, I want to have an opportunity to be able to make mistakes. Like, give me the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them. And the way you just broke down the LeBron and his team, he gave them the grace and the space to learn and grow, as opposed to pivot and say, all right, the next part of my journey, I need to get somebody else to kind of help me get to this next space. No, he rocked out with that crew to get to that space. So you are right. If nothing else, there should be a case study or something speaking to just that part. Forget about all the accolades. Forget about all the deals. Forget about everything. Look at the simple principle of empowering and building through mistakes and flaws and flourishing as one.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that. Look, I just gave you some content, bro. I think I need to be an executive producer when we create that, because that right there is powerful. That's the piece that unfortunately I think gets missed because of all the amazing accolades, right? All the things that they've done and accomplished. But there's
Yep.
that simple principle that can go so far and change so many things for so many people if you really lock into that and how they are the example of it.
Yep. I think that you said outside of my industry because Jay is another example in my mind, but they seem to understand the value of relationships and the value of the same people you see on the way up, you see on the way down. You made a great point. If you look at the music industry, I could be wrong, but how many Black artists keep their managers in play for years and years and years and years and years,
Right.
through ups and downs, without understanding that they are the value? Somebody might be able to come in and help you better understand and maximize your value, but you are the value. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, man. We are slaves by nature, and we were divided and conquered in very early stages, and that's a very difficult mindset to deconstruct over time because someone is always working to reinforce it. And so we have
Man,
to go above and beyond to make sure that we deconstruct that mindset of, I need this to make me better. I need that to make me better. If you have a cohesive team of people who hunger the same way you hunger, even in the midst of you're not perfect. You put out a flop album. You can't make free throws. Nobody is perfect. And so to be able to have that degree of cohesiveness going up the food chain, I'd like to see us get that together. We have a very disproportionate belief is that after we get to a certain point that something else will complement us better, when we had to establish this whole degree of urgency and power on our own. You know what I mean?
right.
And all someone else is going to do is help you unlock it. So pay them to help you unlock it and keep it pushing. Keep your team tight. Keep your team cohesive.
I love it. So that kind of leads into this next one. When we always talk about seeds, as you see, what are the 3 seeds you would want to leave with the stewards of the future, of culture moving forward? If there are 3 significant seeds.
I think that one, whatever you believe in, you have to approach it unapologetically. You have to put the visor on, and you have to remove all the no's from from your immediate ecosystem and any that might be floating around you, and just go unapologetically forward for whatever it is you want to accomplish, whatever your purpose is. I think that's essential in whatever this next iteration of Black men and women look like. It's an essential to know, to have a sense of self and be able to build on top of that. I can't stress that enough. I think too, when you're putting young men and women into this world, like, it all starts at home. And we can say that as parents. And you know what? For those who will hear this podcast and are not parents yet, they won't get it. Right?
Right.
But it's, having a child is like wearing your heart outside of your chest every day. That's literally what it feels like for me, right? My son is going to get in the car and go somewhere, and I'm going to be like, damn, he got my shit outside my chest again right now.
Right.
But the point is that I'm hoping that I have instilled enough in him, being at home with him, being a part of his life, being a part of his ecosystem on a day in and day out basis. I know things get willy-nilly, but being present in your kid's life and really trying to institute some things into them that you may not have had in your life, or that you see parts you skipped in your adulthood, or that you wish you would have tapped into, giving them that knowledge, those tools moving forward is essential to how we set up the next generation. And when you don't have any kids and you're just going through life, you don't give a thought about any of this, right? But when you start to have kids and you start to pay attention, like, to elections and how the world is working, and you have kids, you start looking at everything, right?
Yep.
But it all starts at home. Like, it's those early seeds that you plant at home. And then I would say, honestly, man, you gotta block out the noise. You gotta block out the white noise, because it's here to just distract you from your purpose.
That's right.
I don't know if it's been happening consciously, subconsciously. I don't know if people are throwing darts at you, or are throwing these misgivings at you, intentionally or unintentionally, but it's up to you to be at peace with what's happening in your heart and what's happening in between your 2 ears, to be able to move your process forward. And you have to block out the white noise. We all do, to be able to get where we want to go. Those are things and I'm giving you these anecdotes because these are things that I'm on my child about, and about these kids that I'm interacting with on a regular basis. Especially because when you look like this, when you have some melanin in your skin, your journey is just going to be a little more challenging than your contemporaries.
That's right.
So, these are some of the seeds to help you contend with that and move that forward. The water's already going to be choppy, but if you can kind of stay locked into this base, it gives you a better opportunity to achieve some success and to be able to withstand some of those choppy waters when they're ready to turn your boat upside down. Sure.
And I think they're all really great reinforcements, I'm sure, even for yourself to reflect on, right?
Hey, bruh, I can't tell you how many times I'll have a conversation with my kid and then have to apply the same thing back to myself based on, yeah. And it makes me feel good about what I'm pushing forward on him and what I'm projecting on him. But then it's really, it can become, you know, it's worth it when you can kind of play that message back to yourself and understand, you know, the rule applies all the way around the board, bro. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And
That's right.
at 17 or 50. So.
That's right. So this is an interesting one. When I talk about, so the opening scene to your life documentary is about to begin. What song is playing and why?
Oh,
This is fitting for a number of reasons.
There is a song that I just put in a clearance for. It's a Jeezy and Jay-Z song called "Seen It All."
Okay. How about that?
Yeah.
Say less. Say less.
I don't know if you heard that record before, but it feels like somebody made that for me.
For you. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, Chris, I can't thank you enough, not only for this time, but really your friendship, your leadership. I mean, we've spoken, and even when we haven't spoken for a while, we pick right back up.
Yep.
And your energy, your focus, and your passion has never wavered. And I just want to I thank God for you.
I appreciate it.
I thank him for the example that you're setting and all the amazing work that you're doing by being you. And I just wanted to thank you for sharing that today, bro. This was amazing.
Hey, man, thank you for sharing your platform with me, man. This won't get you out of whatever is going to happen to you the next time we get on the golf course. All this goodwill will not.
It's not going to save me from you taking my paper.
Well, no. It won't offset any of that, but it doesn't subtract for the love. The love is always been mutual since day one. And you know, I hope that this goes every way that you need it to go. I'm certain it will. You know what I mean? Your community will be supportive as I have been. I'm just looking forward to great things and for you to continue this moving. And I'm going to be paying very close attention.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you, man.
Oh, man. Talk soon. Y'all be good.